Well, I'm delighted today to be speaking to Gary Heynes, tax partner at RSM London, in a beautiful sunny day here in Zurich. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you, David. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to have this conversation with you.
So you've been a great supporter of PCD events. You've been over before to our networking dinners in Zurich and elsewhere. But for those who've not had the chance to meet you, it'd be great to get a bit more about your background and what you do at RSM.
Yeah, sure. So I've been at RSM almost 20 years. Next April will be 20 years that I've been with the firm. Actually, I joined Baker Tilly in 2003, and then through various acquisitions we made, the last big one being the 2013 acquisition of RSM Tenon, and then our global rebrand in 2015 to RSM. I'm here today in RSM, and my first role is I run the private client business. Now RSM in the UK is about 4,000 people, and the private client team is about 250 people. With just over 20 partners, and I'm responsible for the strategy, where we think the business is going to go, so that's always quite interesting in uncertain times. The day-to-day operations of the business, and the profitability, the P&L and running of the business, but I also look after some clients as well.
And I mean, RSM is an exciting global franchise. I imagine sat in London, you deal with offices all around the world.
Yeah, absolutely right, David. So I have a few other roles which go alongside my UK private client roles, and that really demonstrates the breadth of what we do across the globe. So we have offices in 120 countries. So we're a large firm, sixth largest global firm. And the other roles which supplement my private client role in the UK is I head up jointly our family business advisory team in the UK together with an audit partner. And that really is around looking holistically at families and their businesses and how they evolve over time on their wealth journey. So they might go from an operating business into a family office or kind of investment holding structure arrangement. And we do that not only in the UK, most families these days, most businesses of any reasonable size will have an international connection. So that definitely extends into our international firm. The other couple of roles that I have, jointly with a partner in the Netherlands, I oversee our private client and family office service across Europe. And I also sit on our global steering committee for private client services, looking at how we work with multinational clients. So one of the great things that we're able to do is not only service international clients, which lots of firms can do. I think the unique bit that we can do is that we can often do that through one engagement with one central team in a particular location, and we'll sort out all the other internal bits and pieces that you need to do in order to give joined up advice across multinational countries.
And the Swiss market is one that you know very well. You look after clients here, you work with professionals. You've been travelling to both Zurich and Geneva for many years.
Yes.
What's your observations on the Swiss market? What have you learned in that time when you've been travelling here?
So the Swiss market, of course, is famous for their banking arrangements. And what we find is that for individuals, either investing into the UK or moving into the UK from either the Middle East or Far East, Swiss banking provides the kind of ideal location and quality of banking arrangements for what they need. You can imagine sort of non-domiciled individuals moving into the UK, you'll know that they need to structure their accounts in a certain way. And often it's difficult to find the banks that can do that in the Middle East or the Far East. And so typically we'll be working with Swiss banks to get that account structuring right. And then beyond that, clearly the trust market in Switzerland has been developing at some pace, and we're on the cusp of getting some trust law in Switzerland and some regulation around some of those trust businesses. And I think that will add to the quality of the service offering out of Switzerland. And then beyond that, in terms of working with the lawyers in the UK and looking at Switzerland as a relocation place for many people looking to either leave the UK, reset their domicile position, or live somewhere not too far away from the UK, but in, if I can call it that, a tax haven environment, which is also quite a normal place to live. Despite the background, it is actually quite a normal place with lots of infrastructure around schooling, healthcare, being able to fly in and out to the UK and elsewhere in the world. It's a great location for clients to move to. So we've seen a number of clients move from the UK to Switzerland to relocate here, maybe for a few years. Some have decided to stay, but it means they've ended up setting, their centre of economic interest here in Switzerland.
Because Swiss residency is a really sort of ultra high net worth option, isn't it? It's not inexpensive to come and relocate here, but it's the quality of life that is on offer, isn't it? And when clients are looking at different jurisdictions where they can actually live and want to build a base, there's a real strong suit here, isn't there, on the lifestyle as well as connectivity, do you find?
Yes, I think so, David. I think most people might think of Monaco or some of the other tax haven jurisdictions to move to, but it's very, very expensive to live there, and it's not very practical if you have a family and you have healthcare or schooling needs and everything else. So I think Switzerland does provide a really good balance between being a place where individuals can come and live, they've access to the infrastructure. Do you need to be super wealthy to live here? I mean, certainly wealthy, maybe not for the moderately wealthy, but I think depending which canton you live in Switzerland, clients will find it fairly accessible.
And when you're working with family office clients, you're not just looking necessarily at the tax or accounting piece, but more of a bigger picture, perhaps technology, or perhaps you give us a flavour of the sort of fuller service you might offer to a family office client.
Yes, of course. So, a typical family office that we will work with will have transitioned their wealth, say from an operating business where they've got a large accounting team and individuals running the business, looking at the books, into various structures that could be corporate structures, trusts, other arrangements which hold their personal wealth and personal assets. And what we find is that clients generally have a need to understand where everything is, and when they want to buy something or they want to sell something and transfer money around, where do they do that and how do they do that? So we typically have that overview of everything. But we've extended that reach, particularly for family offices, because of that transition from having perhaps a full accounting team behind them. And we have some technology these days which help family offices understand where their wealth is. So we provide a dashboard which can pull through on a daily feed information about the performance of their assets, which could be held with various banks, other investment houses. And it pulls it all forward into a dashboard view for them. They can see which entity that is held in. They can see what their exposures in the market is. They can use some of that data in some situations to provide some accounting and tax reporting information as well. So, what we like to do with family offices, we like to take the full overview and then work with their bankers and their lawyers and their family office advisors around looking at those structures, making sure they're continually fit for purpose, that they're reporting in the right way, and that we're using them effectively for both the family and the tax and legal needs that fit around that.
And are you seeing clients owning new types of assets now as well? Are you seeing like wealth created from crypto or digital, clients wanting to diversify out of purely traditional assets into buy NFTs and things like that? Are you seeing that cropping up, or is that still something you're reading about rather than seeing coming across your desk?
Well, you can tell by my grey hair, David, that NFTs and cryptos probably aren't the kind of things which I see too often, but certainly within the firm we do. And various of my partners are very much involved in cryptos and NFTs and structures which can hold those in the right sort of way, or individuals who have exited from some of those in quite a good way and now are sitting in cash, which they want to invest in a more traditional discretionary portfolio, but equally they're still looking for the right structure in which to hold that. I have to say though, we're still seeing a lot of people still holding traditional investments. Property in the UK still seems to be a really core investment category for many, many clients worldwide, and that provides a lot of opportunity for us. And the money, typically, if it's Far East or Middle East again, comes via Switzerland into a structure and then into the UK property market.
So do you see, the current weakness in sterling, rumours in the papers about stamp duty cuts and things like that, all pointing the right direction for Middle and Far East investors to come and buy long-term assets in London, which you need to help structure or gives them a footprint in the UK that then they need to manage?
Yeah, I think I do, and I think UK properties has been the kind of constant, stable type of investment over the years. Some people in the UK might say, well, there's lots of ups and downs in the UK, but in the grand scheme of things internationally, the UK is very stable. Property prices have generally, on the longer term trend, gone up, and we constantly see money coming out of less stable jurisdictions into the UK property market. And I think, stamp duty being decreased will probably help that.
And are you seeing investment also going out into the regions, or is it really a London phenomenon for international investors?
So I think certainly for investors looking for a home or residential property, that London still remains a really key centre for where people want to live and work and relocate to. We have seen investment going outside of the UK. I suppose the most common area outside of the UK has been the northwest, typically Manchester and the surrounds, but that tends to be commercial property investment rather than residential, places for people to live.
And the pandemic has changed the way people spend their time, reside in different places. Are you seeing the UK residency sort of proposition being as attractive as it's been for people in the Middle and Far East in terms of new non-doms coming to the UK? You're still seeing a steady flow of people wanting to make the UK a base for themselves?
Well, we have seen a steady flow of people, and perhaps not for working reasons necessarily. We've seen a lot of people moving from the UK to live in slightly warmer climes, perhaps to go and work during the summer months. But we have seen, for other reasons, for example, from Hong Kong, people moving to the UK, from China, from Singapore. Education still remains a really cool part. Educating one's children in the UK is a really cool part of the reasons that people come to the UK. And some of the visas now via the Hong Kong B&O visa, for example. So we've seen some relocation for that reason. And that's also been driving some of the property investment and growth in the UK.
And what are some of the traps for the unwary, for those starting to spend a bit more time in the UK? Why do they need to treat that with great care?
So UK tax often presents traps for the unwary. So there's probably a few things. I think coming to the UK, as you say, people starting to spend a bit more time in the UK, I think they really need to be careful at what point they become resident. Sometimes we get a phone call saying I'm arriving in August, and we have to tell the client, actually you've been resident for tax purposes since April. And what's really, really important to do is to get the structuring of financial affairs right before coming to the UK. We've talked about bank accounts and getting the bank structuring right so you can bring capital into the UK. But things like running a company outside of the UK. Well, if you move to the UK and you're still running that foreign company from the UK, well, that company could be UK tax resident. So there's quite a bunch of things that we need to think about. How they bring money into the UK, how they realise assets and gains and income before coming into the UK. And all of that is a really, really important part of the planning. It's much, much harder to unravel all of that once somebody's become resident. So that's one thing I think is really important. I suppose the other thing is around property is it used to be relatively straightforward. I go back sort of 10, 12 years to buy property in the UK. Our advice was quite straightforward. Have an overseas company and buy whatever property you're buying in the UK through the overseas company or trust or whatever it might be. These days you will be faced with things like the trust registration service, depending on how it's being held, the register of overseas entities, the annual tax on envelope dwellings, capital gains tax if you try and move these properties around, and a whole host of other kind of practical things. Never mind the vast amount of stamp duty that people have to pay when buying these structures. So I think there's a number of reporting and filing and tax considerations which really need to be thought about before somebody moves into the UK, and certainly if they feel they're spending more and more time in the UK, come and speak to an advisor.
Fantastic. And travel's now firmly back on the agenda for a lot of colleagues. Have you got travel plans now into the autumn? Where are you going to be travelling to before the end of the year or into next year? Are you looking at different dates and locations?
So most of the work travel is still short haul. It's around Europe, Channel Islands and places like that. And hopefully next year we'll start to get into the more longer haul. What I have found though is that certainly for families and family offices and the very wealthy individuals, they very much prefer to have in-person, face-to-face meetings, and a little bit wary around some of the online platforms and having the types of conversations about family that they would like to have in person. So that's driving some of the need to get out back in the market. Plus it's very enjoyable being in person with clients and colleagues.
Fantastic. Well look, thanks for talking to me today, Gary. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night at the dinner. We look forward to sharing this with our members.
Thanks, Dave.